doesn't compute well. So I had, like I mentioned about the calming of the sea, and that is not the same parallel as the calming of the sea after the feeding of the 5,000. So those are two different stories, and I was like cross-pollinating stories, but anyway, my brain, I think, is back in drive today. So chapter 9, it's a long chapter, it's 62 verses, so we're just going to jump right in. I'm going to read through, and then I'll give commentary. If you guys have questions or you have comments along the way, please feel free to grab the microphone. It is a free for all. Is there anybody we should keep the mic from today? Anybody whose filter is off today? Kelly looks like one. Just keep it away from her. We'll keep it Christian today. All right, starting in verse 1. And he called the 12 together, and he gave them power and authority over all demons. You notice this theme within Luke. Luke talks a lot about demonology. Very interesting. I guess I'll comment before reading this all. Very interesting, because a lot of people today say, well, back then, they weren't really that educated, and they were confusing mental illness with demonology. Well, what's fascinating about that theory is here you have a medical doctor who's writing this gospel, who's writing a lot about demons. And I think it's pretty fascinating because Luke also is very careful to give a very accurate account. So he's writing to Theophilus, which means lover of God. We don't really know anything about Theophilus, but Luke says, I'm writing an orderly account. And he's very careful to interview people, and Luke is not one to misrepresent anything. And to mention the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. But at any rate, I just think that's worth mentioning. Luke knew the difference between mental illness and demon possession. All right, so Jesus gives them all power and authority over all demons to cure diseases, and he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal. So, first of all, you hear me talk a lot about mission. Jesus had a mission. It was preach the word about the kingdom of God and to bring healing to people. And he said to them, take nothing for your journey, no staff, nor bag, nor bread, nor money, and do not have 2 tunics. And whatever house you enter, stay there, and from there depart. And wherever they do not receive you, when you leave that town, shake off the dust from your feet as a testimony against them. And they departed and went through the villages, preaching the gospel and healing everywhere. They were preaching and they were healing. They were doing the very thing that Jesus was doing. So a couple things. One, he tells them not to take anything. No staff, no bag, no bread. How long does bread last? And I'm not talking about the preservative-laced stuff that we eat today that gives you like bloated stomach for, a couple days. Yep, that's right. And so if your bread is going to last a couple days, and he's saying don't bring any bread. In essence, what he's saying is you're literally living day by day, right? You're living on faith. God is going to take care of you. And Jesus repeats this over and over and over and assures people that God is going to take care of you. Now, I've heard this before, and so again, this is my opinion on this. This is not pure fact. But a lot of people want to read into this, and they're like, see, he's equipping his disciples. He's training his disciples for how to be true followers. I think part of that's true. But I think another part of that we often overlook is, who is Jesus preaching to pretty consistently? Like, what's the socioeconomic level of people? Yeah, very poor. Outcasts. Very sick people, chronically sick people. Now imagine if his disciples go out and they're preaching to these people and they're trying to connect to them, right? And they have their suitcase, they have their extra clothes, they have gourmet freeze-dried foods that they can, add a little water to and cook over the fire and have a nice steamy hot meal at night. Imagine trying to connect to people who are dirt poor. And you look like you just hit the lottery to these people. Do you think they're going to be able to connect? Probably not. Not very well. But if they are in the same or similar situation, they're literally living meal by meal, I think they have a lot better chance of connecting with people. And it sounds a lot like what Paul said. I became all things to all people so that I might win, how many? Some. Paul's not out to get everybody. He knows the majority of people aren't going to follow him. He becomes all things to all people so that he might win some. So I think the other side of this coin is, yes, Jesus is equipping his disciples to live off of faith in him, but he's also allowing his disciples to connect to people because they were similar. It's like Peter said, right? It's one of my favorite stories in Acts 4. Peter and John are going up the temple steps, and there's a man begging, and he's been lame. And Peter's message is, first of all, look at us. And the guy looks up, and they connect eyes. So he humanizes the guy. He's no longer the beggar. He's a human. He's a person. Look at us. And then the very next thing he says, silver and gold we do not have. I don't think it was like today, right? We're all guilty of this. Let's not lie. We walk into a city and we're walking by and somebody's begging. And we're like, oh, don't have any money. And then we just keep walking. Well, we have money. We just don't have cash, and we don't want to be inconvenienced to go to the ATM and pull some out. This is not Peter. I mean, they literally don't have money. Right? They have nothing. And it goes back to, I talk about this all the time, we got caught in this lie that we have to have all these resources. We have to, if this church is going to reach the community and we're going to grow and we have to have a facility, right? We have to have a building. That's a lie. You don't need a church building. Trust me, I have friends who don't have church buildings who they are just exploding. They're growing like crazy. No church building. They're meeting in homes. We need financial resources. We need this really big budget or we can't reach people. That's not true. It's not true at all. Jesus proved it over and over and over again. So anyway, I just want to point that out. There are different sides of this coin, but part of that is the relatability to people. That it's pretty hard to connect to somebody if you don't really get it. If you don't get their situation, you're a hypocrite to them. Okay. Now, Herod the Tetrarch heard about all that was happening, and he was perplexed, because it was said by some that John had been raised from the dead. This is John the Baptist. By some that Elijah had appeared, and by others that one of the prophets of old had risen. Herod said, John I beheaded, but who is this about whom I hear such things? And he sought to see him. Kind of interesting because Luke puts this out there and then never mentions it again. He just kind of hangs this out there. And I'm left wondering, did Herod seek to see Jesus because he really was kind of curious? Or did Herod the Tetrarch want to shut this down? I don't really know. Charles, I am positive you have an opinion. And I want to hear it because I'm legitimately curious. Do you guys want to they can hand him a mic from back there.
It was for the purpose of shutting.
It's on. I can hear it.
It was for the purpose of shutting it down.
Shutting it down.
You have someone who is detracting from Herod and who is drawing attention away from him and his deeds, and who is rivaling him in popularity in his mind.
Yeah.
This is not a question of, I'd like to see what he's up to and what he's about. As it points out, I beheaded John, so who is this?
Yeah.
It's not a, ooh, I wonder who this is, let's find out. It's a, who does he think he is?
So I agree with that. And one of the reasons I was curious is because John and Herod had a really, really bizarre and interesting relationship. Because Herod was intrigued by the things that John was saying, but he also didn't like that he was being called on the carpet. So Herod didn't really love that. And you can tell also he was a little bit bothered by the fact that he was tricked into beheading John the Baptist. Like, I think it kind of bothered him a little bit, but at the same time, that's a good point. He's kind of rising up the ranks in popularity in his own mind. And the other thing is, you don't really want to upset the emperor. In a high position like Herod, the Tetrarch, you don't really want to have a bad reputation back to the emperor, because then your own neck is on the line, literally, and that's just not a good thing. So, yeah, kind of interesting. Okay, on their return, the apostles told him all that they had done. So he sends them out. They're preaching, they're healing. They come back. They tell him everything that they had done. And he took them and withdrew apart to a town called Bethsaida. Now, interesting, Luke leaves out what Mark put in. Mark said, Jesus said, let's go over to a desolate place, because they had no leisure even to eat. The crowds were pressing in on them. Luke eliminates that. He deletes that part out, which I find a little bit interesting. But they were exhausted. According to Mark, they were exhausted by this point. Jesus says, hey, you know what? Let's go to a desolate place. They go over to Bethsaida, which is the northeastern part of the Sea of Galilee. So they go across, and when you're going across the tip of the Sea of Galilee, it's not that far. It's a few miles. It's not terribly far. And the crowds are able to run around the top edge of the Sea of Galilee. There's a path that goes around the Sea of Galilee, and that's exactly what happened. When the crowds learned it, they followed him. Obviously, they didn't get in boats and follow him across the Sea of Galilee. They were on foot, and they went around the top corner of the Sea of Galilee. They followed him and welcomed them and spoke to them of the kingdom of God and cured those who had need of healing. Now, when the day began to wear away, and the 12 came and said to him, send the crowd away to go into the surrounding villages and countryside to find lodging and get provisions, for we are here in a desolate place. But he, that is Jesus, said to them, his disciples, you give them something to eat. Then they said, we have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we are to go and buy food for all these people. Obviously, Jesus told them what? We just read it. He sent them out. What are they supposed to take with them? Nothing. So they get a little, I think they get a little jab in here to Jesus. Unless we're supposed to go buy food for all these people, I sense a little sarcasm. What are they going to buy the food with? Jesus left them broke, literally. For the purpose of, what? The 2 things. Have faith in God that God will provide. God will give you your bread. And the other is what? Connect with the people. Right? Become all things to all people so that you might win some. And so they're like, well, all we have are 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we're supposed to go buy food for all these people. For there were about 5,000 men, Roman way of counting, I guess. So there were estimates of around 15 to 20,000 people, including women and children. It's a lot of people. And he said to his disciples, have them sit in groups of about 50 each. And they did so and had them all sit down. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing over them. Then he broke the loaves and he gave them to the disciples to set before the crowd. And they all ate and were satisfied. And what was left over was picked up, 12 baskets of broken pieces. This is not coincidental. Gathering up the 12 is a very significant number, obviously. It represents what? You have the 12 tribes of Israel. You have the 12 disciples. It's a very significant number. And it also represents, again, this wholeness. Now, it happened that as he was praying alone, the disciples were with him. And he asked them, who do the crowd say that I am? And they answered, John the Baptist. But others say Elijah, and others, one of the prophets of old has risen. Then he said to them, but who do you say that I am? Peter answered, the Christ of God. He's the Messiah. Peter knows it. Peter, again, my nickname for him is 110 because he's 110% with everything. When he's right, he's 110% right. When he's wrong, 110% wrong. Peter is fully committed. He's not like those of us, I'll include myself in this, who sometimes you ride the fence, right? Charles is smiling because he knows me. I ride the fence sometimes and I'm like, well, I don't want to be wrong over here, but I don't want to be wrong over here, so I'll kind of take this middle ground. Not Peter. Peter's like, dude, you're the Christ. I know you. I know you're the Messiah. Remember Jesus washing the disciples' feet? Who was it? Peter. Jesus gets to Peter. He says, you will never wash my feet. And Peter uses interesting language. You guys have heard me say this before. But he uses a double negative, and then he attaches something else onto the end of that to make it like a quadruple negative, sort of. And so in the Greek, we were just talking about Koine Greek a little bit ago. In Greek, you can use double negatives. In English, you can't. You can't say, don't not do that. We can't use double negatives. In the Greek language, you can, if you want to emphasize something a little bit. It's like giving an inflection to something, like no. So they would use a double negative in the language to kind of draw out that emphasis. And so Peter says, he says, no, you will never wash my feet ever. He uses this phrase. It's a Greek phrase which translates ever or forever, but literally it means, it's the words into the ages. So he says, you will never, ever wash my feet, ever. I mean, Peter goes 110%, and Jesus says, then you can have no part of me. What's Peter's response? Then wash all of me. I want everything from head to toe. Wash all of me, Jesus. Peter knows. He knows that Jesus is the Christ. He's the Messiah. And I love Peter because, man, you don't get many characters that are just so right and so wrong so many times. Paul publicly rebukes Peter after Jesus ascends. Peter has this incredible sermon on the day of Pentecost. 2,000 people are baptized. And then Paul opens up the book of Galatians and he's like, I publicly blasted Peter to his face because he was wrong. Peter started, because of fear, Peter started associating with Jewish people and alienating the Gentiles, and I publicly rebuked him to his face. I love that about Peter because it shows humanity. It shows that even a disciple of Jesus, somebody who was given all authority to cast out demons and to heal, somebody who knew and identified Jesus as the Christ way before anybody else did, somebody who denied Jesus who repented of that, who was broken over that, who preached to thousands of people. Thousands were baptized in one day. The healing of the guy going up the temple steps. There were 4,000 people that came to Christ because of that one event, because of what Peter did. I love that about Peter. It shows the humanity, and it shows that when we screw up, God's grace is sufficient, so long as we repent and turn back to God. And we're not like, well, I'm going to keep using my grace card, right? Because that's what Hebrews talks about. And Paul talks about it in Romans 6. Shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase? May it never happen. All right, so anyway, I love Peter. Love Peter. And he strictly charged and commanded them to tell this to no one, saying, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed and on the third day be raised. Do you think Jesus left a little room for misinterpretation here? Not at all. It's black and white. This is what's going to happen first. The Son of Man has to suffer many things, be rejected by the elders, be rejected by the chief priests, be rejected by the scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. Oh. Can you imagine? Peter's on this, I love this about Peter. And Luke draws this out so often, like no other gospel writer. Luke is the one who draws this out. Remember what I said about changing the camera perspective? He slows things down. In the Greek language, you pick up on this a lot more. But Luke, it's like he's holding a video camera as he's writing. And it's really a gift that he has. He has the gift of drawing attention to detail and making our mind kind of jump to different conclusions on purpose. Luke is doing this on purpose. So Peter, it's like, hey, you will never, ever wash my feet, ever, forever, never. Then you can have no part of me. All right, then wash all of me. It's like this super high, super low. Peter denies Jesus, and the third time, and then the rooster crows. And listen to what Luke does. And Jesus, all right, so here's the scene. Luke's writing this, right? And Peter denies Jesus the third time, and the rooster crows. Listen to what Luke does. And Jesus turned and looked directly at Peter. And Peter went out and wept bitterly. You can feel it. When Luke writes, you can feel it. You can feel the betrayal. Jesus has his back turned. Peter's saying this literally behind Jesus' back. He's denying Jesus. Jesus turns, looks him right in the eye. Here, you have, it's like this super high and super low. Just instantly, Luke takes you from 30,000 feet into the basement, under the sea, that quick. So, you're the Christ. You are the Christ of God. You're the Messiah. I know it. I know that you're the one to come and save the world. All right, know this. I have to suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and on the third day rise. Oh, and don't tell anybody. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Jesus says, "Don't get behind me, Satan." It's an immediate, you're the Christ. Get behind me, Satan.
How about this one? Peter, do you love me? Lord, you know that I love you. Peter, do you really love me? Lord, you know that I love you. Feed my sheep, right? Peter, do you love me? Then Peter just falls apart emotionally. It just crashes. And it's like these crazy scenes that play out. But yeah, you're right. When it comes to this is why Peter denied, because he didn't believe it. He's like, there's no way. You're the Messiah. I know you're the Messiah. You're not going to die. It's not going to happen to you. Get behind me, Satan. It's like he hits a home run, and Jesus is like, like squashes them.
World do they not, after being with Jesus for 3 years and him telling them over and over again, I'm going to die on a cross, like he spelled it out pretty blatantly. And
I think it's because all of us, all of us have confirmation bias. I mean, constantly. Like there are certain things that we're like, oh, well, this, I got this parking spot because I prayed, and it's like, obviously, God gave me this parking spot, right? We have confirmation bias about all kinds of things. And I think the disciples, they're no less human than we are. So yeah, they saw incredible things, but here's the thing. How many of us have seen really incredible things throughout our life? There was no denying ever that it was miraculous. I mean, all of us, if I asked a show of hands, all of us would raise our hands and be like, we've seen miraculous things. But here's the other thing. We've seen really horrible things too in life. And so they're seeing really great things and really bad things. And it's like as humans, we have to process that and make sense of that in a world where God reigns over all of us, over all his creation. We have to make sense of that. And so as humans, we have a really hard, that's why, how can a good God allow bad things to happen to good people, right? It's the age-old question. Job's friends, that's what they were hung up on. There's no way that a good God can allow somebody like you, Job, to have all these bad things happen to you, to have your whole family, all of your kids die, you lose your farm, you lose everything. A good God would never allow that to happen to a righteous person. So, Job, what's your hidden sin? Right? We wrestle with this as humans, and it's that confirmation bias that we all struggle with. And I think you see it played out in the Gospels like brilliantly. But yeah, great point. And then he said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. For what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses or forfeits himself? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed when he comes in his glory and the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. Now, it's interesting to me that Luke puts this right after, immediately after Peter says, you are the Christ. Peter correctly identifies him as the Christ. And then he says, all right, if anybody comes after me, if you want to follow me, you have to deny yourself, take up your cross, in other words, be willing to die daily, and follow me. Whoever would save his life will lose it. What do you think Peter was doing in the court when he's denying Jesus? Literally, this is being played out. Peter's trying to save his own life. Peter's trying to gain the world. He's trying to save face. He's trying to save himself. He's not only distancing himself from Jesus, he's denying, I don't know the guy. I have no idea who that is. There's a reason why Luke writes in the order that he does, and it's not just he's like, well, I'm going to write this boring chronological story and, make sure all the facts are in order, because those other New Testament authors, they really wrote things out of order. No, we're going to go through chronologically, Theophilus, and this is going to be a really orderly account. Luke is doing something very deeply, profoundly theological throughout his entire gospel. Listen to this. Peter just said, did he not? Peter just said, you are the Christ. He didn't hesitate. He wasn't like, well, I think, Alex, what is the Messiah? Right? No, he's like, you're the Christ. I know you are. You're the Messiah. You're the one who all the prophets were talking about, saying that this Messiah is going to come and save Israel. You are him. That's Peter's response. Right after Jesus goes in and says this, whoever is ashamed of me and my words, listen to what he says. Of him will the Son of Man be ashamed. And his glory and the glory of the Father and of the Holy Angels. Do you think Peter thought of this when he denied Jesus? I do. I guarantee it. I guarantee this was playing through Peter's mind like a record over and over and over and over again. Whoever's ashamed of me and of my words, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed. You better be ready. If you're going to follow me, you better be ready to deny yourself, take up your cross daily, and follow me. Verse 27, but I tell you truly, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God. And then the transfiguration. All right, let me set this up just for a second. This is 8 days after the sayings. Again, Luke is very detail-oriented. He is into chronology. But he's also doing something profoundly theological throughout his gospel. And the transfiguration is like picture going up a hill, and you have the peak of the mountain. It's kind of the climax. And then everything after that, you're like, oh, good, we made it to the top. And now you start going downhill, and everything from there, from there on out, you're going downhill. The transfiguration in the Gospel of Luke acts as a pivot point where everything in Luke from this point on, from the transfiguration on, is pointing Jesus to Jerusalem to be crucified. Everything. Everything. This is the climax in the Gospel of Luke. This is the mountaintop, literal mountaintop experience. And everything after this, Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. He's making his way to Jerusalem for the final time, and he's going to be crucified. All right, now with that known, let's listen to this. Now about 8 days after these sayings, he took with him Peter, John, and James, and went up on the mountain to pray. First of all, what do we know about these three? What are they known as? Peter, James, and John. They're Jesus' inner circle. I just sprayed water. I'm picturing myself in a fountain, spitting the water up on a beach somewhere. So they're the inner circle, right? Peter, James, and John are privy to a lot of things that the other disciples aren't. They're the inner circle. What else? What do you know about John and James? What's their nickname? Sons of Thunder. I picture them in like the leotard, like the tights, like they're wrestling, ready to like bounce off the ropes and take people out. They didn't get that nickname by accident. They're the Sons of Thunder because, why? Give me some quick theories. Why are they the Sons of Thunder? Yeah, they argue a lot. They fight a lot. Yes, they want to call fire down on people. You're going to see that here. They're like, God or Jesus, do you want us to call fire down on them? Like they're the Sons of Thunder. They're obnoxious. And it goes to show, like I've always struggled with this because I'm not a very pushy person. It's just not my personality. And so I've always struggled because like it shuts me down when I see people that are just like bam, 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 like just constantly pushing people, and they're like, don't you see it? Right? Like, it's right here in the Bible. And then they're like hitting people over the head with the Bible. And I'm like, I'm going to run and hide in a cave. But the Sons of Thunder were like they were just obnoxious. And Jesus used them. Right? Jesus had in his inner circle, his closest circle, he had guys who literally were like, Jesus, do you want us to call fire down from heaven and kill these people? Right? So it makes us take a step back and say, well, maybe some people who are very offensively defensive of God might not be bad people. Yeah, maybe they just have this boisterous personality. And so James and John, they I love it. I love that Jesus has a very dynamic, different group of people. So they went up on the mountain to pray. And as he was praying, the appearance of his face was altered, and his clothing became dazzling white. You know what's about to happen because every time this happens, you have blinding light. People are blinded by the brightness. The glory of God shows up. And behold, two men were talking with him, with Jesus. Moses and Elijah. This is important. You have the law, Moses the law, Elijah representing the prophets. You have all of the law and the prophets. What does Luke say constantly? Jesus came to fulfill, actually Matthew says it probably more. Jesus came to fulfill all of the law and the prophets. He's up on a mountain. He's talking with Moses and Elijah who appeared in, what? What's this? Appeared in glory. And spoke of his departure. You want to know what word is used here? Here's a little fun. They didn't transliterate this word, which kind of bothers me. They translated it instead of transliterating. They didn't come up with a word that sounds like it. Here's the word in Greek. They spoke of his exodos. In Greek, the Greek word used is exodos. What's that sound like? Moses is talking with Jesus about his exodus. What was the Exodus event? God saved Israel. God parted the sea and he brought them from slavery into, the desert and essentially the promised land. And now the law and the prophets are represented. Moses and Elijah, Jesus came to fulfill all this. They're talking about Jesus' exodus, his departure. Jesus is now going to become what Moses and Elijah were, parting the sea, so to speak, and saving everybody. It's not just Israel. He's saving everybody. He's leading the Exodus. They spoke of his departure, his exodus, which was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and those who were with him were heavy with sleep. What does this sound like? What's this foreshadowing? There's another story just like this in the New Testament. What's it foreshadowing? Yeah, Gethsemane. They're in the garden and they're sound asleep. Jesus says, "Get up so that you don't keep watch so that you don't fall into temptation." When they became fully awake, they saw his glory, this blinding light, and the two men stood with him. And as the men were parting from him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. All right, so essentially Peter's trying to make them all equals, and Jesus is like, no, we're not equals. I came here to fulfill everything that they did. We're not on equal ground. And as he was saying these things, a cloud came and overshadowed them. What does this sound like? Sounds like Moses, right? When Moses is up on the mountain, the cloud envelops it, and there's thunder. There's thunder and lightning surrounding the mountain as Moses is up receiving the 10 commandments. This cloud overshadowed them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. And a voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him." Also, the same words that God spoke when Jesus was baptized. "This is my son with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him." And when the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent and told no one in those days anything of what they had seen. From this point on, from that mountaintop experience, everything now in Luke the compass points to Jerusalem. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. Everything happens through the lens of the fulfillment and the foreshadowing of what's about to happen. He's fulfilling the Old Testament, the Old Law, the prophets, and the Exodus is now underway. So pretty cool thing that I think we often overlook. We're out of time. We're actually over time. I'm going to stop there. Thank you guys all, and we'll see you in a few minutes.